And good morning again. Glory be to God. He spreads a table before me in the presence of my enemies. There is a presence of the Lord, and there is a presence of your enemy. Quite recently, I ran into Snoopy the Snoop. I had just finished praying and had gone to take care of some executive business. And immediately I saw a red fox standing before me. This is a spiritual transaction. Spiritual transaction. So I want you to stick with me. I'm going to give you my reality. While I'm sleeping and while I'm awake, he instructs my reins. While I'm sleeping, my pumpkin is growing. While I'm sleeping, my calabasa is increasing. Nevertheless, that does not mean you don't have an adversary. You may be sleeping, like I left a very beautiful pineapple in my backyard with the intent of getting up the next day to reap my pineapple. Beautiful pineapple. But when I got up, the rabbit, which runs in my neighborhood, ate my pineapple. So you might just think that you're on the cusp of a harvest, a celebration, when something else, someone else has another plan for you. I was out in my backyard again, and my wife had planted some beautiful plants that she had, and when I moved into the property, there I saw a neglected aloe plant, the thin leaves aloe. Now, where I grew up, my grandmother used to use the broadleaf aloe, the broadleaf aloe, and she would use that to wash my aunt's hair. And my God, my aunt's hair, for some reason, was always so cherishingly black. And I'd watch my grandmother, and of course, my grandmother, which was my step grandmother, would tell me to my face. She would say these words: boy, I want you to know I'm a 13th generation Ashanti. I try to figure out why my grandmother is telling me all this kind of stuff. But of course, I was born in the city, and they had another colloquial. Their colloquial was, I have to say it in the Jamaican vernacular, Yabakra Pikini, which means belonging to the government. You are sustained by the government. Your generation did not go through the hardship we went through. You belong to the government. Well, I love to be owned. I love to be owned. My wife would often look in my face and tell me, "You're mine." And I said, "Oh no." There she goes. Well, one thing we know about ownership belongs to the Creator. And so the Lord owns us. He is our shepherd. So I come under the rule of ownership and governance. So whenever I'm under the rule of ownership and governance, which means I am totally surrendered, submitted. I may not be in your physical presence, those of you that are my head in various locations, but I don't have to pander to you to let you know that I'm surrendered. Now, just because I'm surrendered does not mean I won't go through conflicts. Does not mean I won't go through troubles. Well, one of the most beautiful things about conflicts and troubles is they make you grow. And you could see in the book of, I believe it is First and Second Timothy. Timothy is a pastor, but he is seeking. A very gentle pastor he was, and he's trying to seek to avoid conflict. And it's the best teaching board that the Apostle Paul has, because Paul's life is mirrored with conflicts. Jesus announced it, and I think Jesus announced it twice. My opinion, and others have not connected, I've got to be careful with the Holy Spirit. But there was a guy in the Bible called the rich young ruler. There's something we know about Paul. He was young, he was rich, and he was a ruler. Jesus invited this rich young ruler to sell all he has and come and follow him. This rich young ruler was rich to himself. And when you're rich to yourself, you can make it up as you go. You have seen the mob when they come around the communities to collect from the store owner who has been working so hard and whatever, wherever he gets his source of funds. But when they come to collect, they just come with a book and they just tell him how much they want and blah, 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 blah. Rich young ruler made it up as he goes. However, he testifies of himself that he was perfect in the law. Now you stand before the giver of the law and tell the lawgiver that you're perfect in the law. And watch if the lawgiver will not bring up another scenario because he can see right through you. I want to listen to me today because the spirit of judgment and the spirit of discipline and the spirit of caution is with me this morning. So the rich young, the master tells the rich young ruler, hey, I want you to sell all that you have and give to the poor. Then when you finish that exercise, can you imagine if Donald Trump had to sell all that he has and give to the poor? Or Warren Buffett had to sell all that he has and give to the poor? It would be an undertaking. He couldn't just throw up his hand and say, hey, today I give everything I have to the poor. You have to sell them off. You have to make an accounting because the IRS wants an account. And then you have to wisely distribute. Jesus didn't tell him, hey, go take all you have and just give it to the poor. I've seen the poor in Grand Central Station, more so Penn Station. And I've seen some things carried on by the poor. And I know that that person is not poor. Right here in my neighborhood at McCulloch and Alafaya, I would literally see these guys, and there's a gang of them in our community. They would take dirt and mar their face to paint a picture that they are poor and desperate. And they'd be standing in the traffic collecting money. And if all the drivers pass by them, give them $1 or $5 or $10, and they collect all of this, these guys can collect thousands of dollars right there at the corner of the street. Yes, their begging is an effort. Yes, it is. It is. It takes time to be out in the sun. Yes, it takes theatrics to mar your face and to look terrible. Yes, it takes theatrics to count it, and it takes theatrics to protect it, right? So we get all of that. But here's the issue now. The rich young ruler dutifully would have to sell all that he has, which would probably take an instant of time. And then he had to give it all to the poor. And then Jesus puts a requirement. Come and follow me. That means all the methods you used to use, I want you to get rid of it. The way you became a rich young ruler, I want you to get rid of it. The way you became educated, I want you to get. This was an invitation into life this guy has. It was an invitation into life because as long as those things held him, rich young ruler, rich, he had to be always protecting what he has. Ruler, he always had to be showing up at the council, and he better make sure his house is in order with his wife and children, or else they'll kick him out of the council. And he was young. He can't pretend he was old. He can't suddenly just become aged. So Jesus got him at the right time. It's like having P. Diddy at the right time. It's like having P. Diddy at the right time. He has known all the carnivorous world of corruption. Now he's got to stand and he has to pass. Not a time for P. Diddy to die. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Now he's got to stand, give an account in this life. It's the most beautiful thing. Why do you want to give an account in this life? Because the worst thing can ever happen to you is to be sent to a Christless eternity where there's nobody there with you. I mean, it's like being trapped, not in Alaska, but in the North Pole by yourself. I don't know how Santa Claus does it. You're trapped in the frozen part of Alaska or in the frozen part of the Antarctica by yourself. You don't want to have that. You want to have relationships. You want to be surrounded. So he was rich to himself. We don't know all the other stuff. And of course, there's a part. Well, the Lord's telling me now, switch. So Jesus invites him into life, and he goes away depressed. He doesn't take the invitation. He doesn't take the calling. He goes away depressed. And whenever you're depressed, there's a couple of things you will do. You will take drugs to get happy again. You live pretentiously. And there's other things you will do. You'll become vindictive. There's one insular character I see in the Spanish community, and I've always seen this. Maybe it's throughout the whole United States, but it's the face of vendetta. Vendetta. It's kind of like something I heard in the Black community. Watch if I'm not going to get you. It's revenge. You kind of live with revenge. None of those fuel is good for you. None of those fuels will ever make you up. I went through a terrible experience, and in that terrible experience, there was an appointment set for me. Terrible, terrible appointment. When others set the agenda for you, and one of the setup agenda that you have to be so careful about is whether or not you're going to go to prison or you are going to be divorced. It's a terrible experience because the pullers of the strings on the background says, we are going to see what you're going to do now. Right? In other words, you might be enjoying yourself in the Lord, but there's an isolation plan for you. It's like solitary confinement. Like solitary confinement. We kind of call that another order of witchcraft. It's kind of another order. It's a series of bondage. And my God, the Lord rescued me in such a beautiful way because it was not so much what I was going to do, but I rejoiced, look what the Lord has done. In other words, there was a curse appointed for me. It was a massive curse that wanted to make sure I don't stand before the people of God. It wanted to make sure that I realized I was human like everybody else. And I want to tell you something about me. I am not human. I'd share that with you, and I hope you'll buy it. Because if I'm not human, you're not human. And why do I say this? Because you never evolved from a monkey. You never came from an amoeba. Those types of things are what the Bible calls the doctrines of devils. The doctrines of devils. Those are the things that grow into the culture of the beast. So you have been taught clearly about the mark of the beast and the culture of the beast, and the way they pineate it to you in the school of biology is that you are nothing but an amoeba that grew up with a tail swinging from a tree. Then you start to learn to walk uprightly. None of that is ever mentioned. If that was the case, then God would have to be the same thing. So you don't want to worship the beast. You got to remember who you are. You're the son of the living God. So I am pineated with this thing, and it's going to be a problem because it's appointed as a bondage. I had not understood it until one day God liberated me and freed me. And I'm going to delve into something we're going to finish very quickly here. There is a bondage that you're subject to. And I began to read that out of the book of Daniel. If I were to be coy today and advance that cause, then I'll also take you to the book of Isaiah. Isaiah, I believe it is, chapter 14. Isaiah chapter 14. In all of these things, we are dealing with bondage. How do you subject the king of bondage? how do you destroy the stronghold of the Roman Empire, of republics, without lifting a finger? The Son of God showed us. Son of God showed us. Because he never made man to be in bondage. He never made man to be a slave or to be in bondage. Well, we live in the United States today, and supposedly we are free. But are you really free? Are you really free? Or are you going to buy from me Galatians chapter 5 today? Stand in the liberty wherein which Christ have made you free, and be not ensnared by the yoke of bondage. Are you going to buy from me Psalms 91? He that dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. Well, I will serve the Lord. He is my refuge and my fortress. My God, in him will I trust. Are we going to buy this type of liberty, this type of freedom, that it's not a rebel outpost? No. It's not fringe armies in the jungle. No, none of that kind of stuff. There's a freedom that God gives that you have to acclimatize yourself to. It says, whom the Son of God has both made free and set free is free in their actions, in their deeds. Free. Say freedom with me today. Because if you're going to enjoy that freedom, you're going to have to do some things to maintain it, even when in bondage. You have to display the best character, the purest life. And I want to say something to you today as you are maybe listening. If you're traveling these holidays, and you have to travel with medications, be very careful. Fact is, those of you that are dependent on medicines or you're traveling, I would suggest that you put your medicine in a package and use extra caution, such as shipping it by FedEx or by U.S. Postal Services to your destination and pick it up when you get there. I would suggest that you don't put it on your luggage that's going through the check-ins. I would suggest you carry it in a clear, open package so that the TSA can check your package in your sight and not behind you. I would suggest. Fact is, I had a vision about this morning. And fact is, I woke up and went into prayer. And as soon as I got into prayer, I saw an article on Apple about pills that look exactly like a Tylenol. Look exactly like a Tylenol. But what it is oxycodone. I'm trying to find the article so I can let you know. The Lord has told me in this season, be very, very careful. Be very careful that you are not a predator or prey of false accusation. Slander is in the entire environment. Those that don't have nothing to do. I grew up in Toronto. I don't remember if it was Toronto I saw this, or New York, I saw this. Police officers had to make quota. And because they had to make quota, they invented situations. Today, as I go through this, I'm going to ask you something. I want you to join me on a 10 days of fasting. It starts today, 10 days of fasting. And one of the reasons for this fasting is to bring you your health forward. Secondly, The Lord has already enjoined me to the fact that many of you are going to go through financial hardship, including myself. Well, if you know these things are going to come upon you, you need to prepare yourself. If you know, in Canada where I grew up, by October, I'm looking for two things: a shift in the atmospheric wind. If it starts shifting, I tell you, my mama knows this. I got a warm sweater on already. I got double layers on. And if Indian summer comes, Indian summer usually comes anywhere between the 10th of October and the 21st of October, I'm ready for it. So if you know you are going to go through financial hardship, and there are some of you, it's going to come as a surprise. So just an absolute surprise. You still need to be ready. Because the endurance test we've been going through, it says endure hardship as a good soldier, not as a bad soldier. You can't be going through difficult times and your solution is drug trade. Very, very bad. Very bad. Because drug trade is the consumption of your neighbor's heart. Drug trade is the consumption of your neighbor's heart. It's a pagination into a vast network of witchcraft. How do I know that? I lived in Toronto, in a huge article on the Toronto Star of the producers of drugs in South America who swear that they would use the drug trade to destroy the youth of America and Canada. So you know drug use and drug trade and drug transport is going to get you into trouble. So I want to alert you, not only now, but going forward to your life. Stay away from it. So we're going to call you into 10 days of fasting. Let me see if I can just summarize this and whip it through really fast and bless you, because I've given you enough to enter the key of life, the key. Getting back to the rich young ruler, Jesus said, how easy it is for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle. Take a look again. Take a look again. My grandmama is sewing my torn shirt. And she takes her little finger, she wets the thread with her glasses on, and she puts it through the little eye of the needle. And she pulls it through. She stitched my shirt. She puts my buttons on. And she stitched my torn shirt. And there I go like a new man. Well, the rich young ruler had this hole in his life. He couldn't see it. Jesus stood before him as the needle. Jesus stood before him not as the excuse, but as the passage into a new life. But he got depressed and he chose violence. He went away depressed. And Jesus comes back, he says, it's easier for a camel. What's a camel? Well, a camel is a dependent creature. The camel is going to go into the desert. He's going to be your ship. Ask the Arabs about this, if you don't know much about camels. And they will drink 40 gallons of water or 40 days of water for 40 journeys through the wilderness. They know it. God had put it inside of them. God had put inside of man the ability to empty himself and to be filled again. Blessed, empowered are they that are hunger and thirst after righteousness, and they empowered. Man has this know-how. If man can fire Starlink into the heavens, and man can live in the satellite station or whatever they call those things that they use to spy our liberty, man can do much better than it. Man has ascended to heaven in the chariot of fire. Man has been buried by angels. Man has been raised from the dead. Man, you are a wonderful creature. So we also know how to have to empty ourselves. We also have to subject ourselves. And so today I'm going to call upon you. I'm going to point out two verses in the Bible that I'm taking this 10:10 from. God made me aware of it. And the first one is from the book of Daniel, chapter 10. And that, Daniel chapter 1 should say, Daniel chapter 1. And they are taken into Babylon. Of course, nobody wants to go. You don't want to see what happened to them. If you thought the yoke of slavery was bad, imagine the yoke that was put on them. Imagine how many of them fell over the mountainside as they're being transported by Babylonians who could care less. Imagine the bitter bondage that they went through. And so they get to Babylon finally, and when they got there, they are now probably put in a holding place. I'm not ashamed of it. They're not ashamed of it. If others did not take my ancestors and bring them to the West, I wouldn't be here. I'm not ashamed of it. I'm excited. I'm a down plant. I'm a tree that's growing. I'm a seed. My children are the results. I'm not ashamed. Come on. Why should I be ashamed? I had no foreknowledge, but here I am, a result. Then God moved on the heart of the chief official to show Daniel favor and compassion. To show what? Favor and compassion. Daniel chapter 1. But he warned Daniel, my lord the king, what has gone on here was the king had chosen them. He said, find some handsome young boys, young men that are intelligent. He said, they got to understand science, and there's a bunch of other stuff. We got to teach them our language. I am here in Puerto Rico. I have to learn Spanish. Teach them our language and our culture. And I want to give them a ration. Give them from my table to eat. There's something about prophets, There's something about prophets. You got to wonder what you eat, You saw Elijah. You saw Jezebel. You saw everywhere I have gone as a minister, somebody's trying to control my diet. And I have to remember the word of God. And if you shall ever eat any deadly thing, it shall not harm you. Then God moved on the heart of the chief official to show Daniel favor and compassion. Daniel. But he warned Daniel, my lord the king has ordered your meat and your drink, and I fear that he will notice if your face start looking worse than the other men your age. You could put my life in jeopardy with the king. In other words, hey, if I don't follow the order of the king, I'm gonna lose my head. Daniel then appealed to the overseer. Daniel is no longer before the king, and he's no longer before the chief official of the king. He goes down. He's humbling himself. He goes down to the overseer, the superintendent, and he appealed. Daniel appealed to the overseer, whom the chief officer put in charge of Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Daniel said to him, test us, your servants, for 10 days. Test us for 10 days. I want you to test yourself. I want you to test yourself for 10 days. You are on blood pressure medicine, and you know how to adjust that. You're on all kinds of medication, including things you're not supposed to take. I want you to detoxify yourself. I want you to detoxify yourself. I want you to switch. I want you to go to bed on time. I want you to wake up early in the morning because God has charged me to endure hardship as a good soldier. That means if I'm going to be a good soldier, I need to tell other soldiers about this. Daniel said to him, test us, your servants, for 10 days. Give us only seeds to eat and water to drink. You just came out of Thanksgiving. You had Black Friday, and today is Small Business Saturday. So those of you that are listening to me, those of you who hear this, I want you to join me on 10 days of fasting, eating only seeds. Seeds. I'm a lover of peanut. I'm a lover of many seeds. Seeds to eat and water to drink. What do we want to see today? We want to see your face shine. We want to see the inner person of you come out. We want to get on of the dependency on the sweet things, the sugar. And you know, cocaine itself is a sugar. I want to get you off of it. I want to detoxify you. Then afterwards, compare our appearance with those of the young men who eat the king's food. They're going to do a comparison. A comparison. Now, we got to move fast. Then you can decide what to do with us. In other words, a servant is subject and is willing to go through whatever they tell him, but he also has the ability to set certain agenda. So the overseer agreed to do what they requested and tested them for 10 days. And when the 10 days were completed, they looked healthier and have even gained more weight. They look healthier. Whoa. So we're going to detoxify ourselves from meats, chicken, beef, pork, shrimp, all of these different predator items that feed on other things. And we're going to move directly to a vegetarian meal. In some other translation, it's pulse. In this translation, it's seeds. So you can eat lettuce, cabbage, carrots, beets, barley. You eat all of those things and drink water. If you don't have a water machine, you will call me at 407-779-3846. And my business, my company, sells an Enagic water machine. Excellent machine. I have one in my house. My mother-in-law has one. My spiritual father and mother has one. A great water machine. Takes all, and you can see here, I think both in the state of Florida and in the decree by the man who was selected to be head of DHS, or it's not DHS, the health department, HHS, talking about taking out the fluoride out of water. So this Kangen water machine does all of that. It returns water to its original estate, takes all the filth out of it, and it prepares you for cleansing on the inside. And it gets to, if you will follow the instruction that I'm giving you this morning, it also gets to all of those things that have been backed up in your system and cleanse your cells and prepare you for healthy living. And one of the reasons why I love this machine so much, it has an oxygen feature that reinfuses oxygens into my system, and I just absolutely love it. Well, let's move on. Then afterwards, compare our appearances with those young men who eat at the king's table. Then you can decide what to do with it. So the overseer agreed to what they requested and tested for 10 days. And these guys look healthier. And these guys even gained weight. The 4 Hebrew young men were in better physical condition compared to any others who had eaten their food from the royal table. They're eating royal food, my friend. Royal food. Can I switch then with you to the New Testament? And you're going to jump over to the book of Revelations, chapter 2. We're going to talk about a wonderful church. There's a city just east of us called New Smyrna. The word Smyrna means myrrh. When Jesus was visited by the wise men, they gave him gold. Then they gave him frankincense and myrrh. At the death of Jesus, his body was washed and perfumed with myrrh. So our fasting is our feasting. It's a killing off of ourselves, like how you kill off a mortgage. It's paying it off. It's dying to ourselves. In this kind of fast, you're going to become self-dependent. I had a vision this morning. My hair was nice and black, and I was cutting it with a cutting machine. A sense of independence, a sense of reliance and self-defense. When you go on a fast, you don't go on fast because necessarily others go on it. Sure, there is a national fast. But in this one, I'm calling you to be responsible. Revelations, I believe it's Revelations chapter 2. I'm thinking about verse 10. Jesus is writing. He's telling John, he says, for these are the words of the one who is the beginning. The one, Jesus, the living word, and the end. The one who became a corpse, but came back to life. I'm aware of all, here's what Jesus wants to say to you and say to me today. I'm aware of all your painful difficulties you have passed through. I'm aware of all your painful difficulties. I'm aware, God's aware of all your painful difficulties. No time to celebrate at your painful difficulties. It's time to move to something else. I am aware of your painful difficulties. I'm aware of your painful difficulties. I'm aware of your painful difficulties that you pass through. And I want to say something today. And your financial hardships, not hardship, but hardships, even though in fact you possess rich treasure. You want to tell people how rich you are. You want to show them your rich treasure. You want to show them your rainbow coalition. You want to show them the glory of. But somehow the house of bondage has afflicted you with painful difficulties. And your financial hardships. I'm aware, you're aware, none of us is excluded. He's writing to a church called, and this church was inside of Turkey. The church of Smyrna was inside of Turkey. So you can understand the stuff they've been through in Turkey. The Roman army sacked this church. Not only did the Roman army sack it, but right after that came the Muslims. And they did their thing. Today, Turkey is mostly a Muslim country, but with one of the richest Christian history. And I noticed something about Satan. Wherever God performs miracles and God grows something, he then goes behind the ignorant ones and he tears it up and he tears it up and he tears it up, and then he establishes a stronghold. I could get into other stuff. And I am fully aware of the slander that has come against you from those who claim to be Jews, but are not, for they are a satanic congregation. This is not necessarily Jewry today. It's not necessarily Jewry today. But we'll substitute here religiosity. In those days, it was the Judaizers. The Judaizers would go behind the Apostle Paul after he had taught the church, all the apostles, and then they would try to get the people to revert back to the law. Could you imagine if my children are growing and I try to make them revert to the fact that I'm their father? I mean, my son right now is in Calgary buying train lines for Loblaws. My other son is off in another blessing, another planet with his wife and his children. My other son is, my daughter has conquered Lloyd's of London and returned to Canada. You can't, that's what religion does. Religion tells you don't grow. Religion tells you don't enjoy your liberties and your freedoms. That's what they were doing here. I'm aware of the slander. What does slander do to you? Slander is the stake. Slander is the spike. Slander. To slander your character means to scatter everyone that gathered with you, to scatter them. But my spiritual father told me something I never forget. He said, Michael, have you ever studied the ants? I said, yeah. He said, have you ever stepped into an anthill? I said, yeah. He said, what does the ants do? He said, the ants move down the street and establish another colony. Jesus said, he that is not gathering with me is slandering me. You got to understand how it happens. What happens is like Zechariah chapter 5. The woman in the basket, the heavyweight, the dead weight, religion. They took religion back to Babylon and set up a house for her over there. Religion has its own house. You don't want to be caught up in religion. You want to be flexible. You want to be able to move when God tells you to move. You don't want to be caught in bondage. I'm aware of the slander that's come against you from those who claim to be something significant, but they're not, for they're from the satanic congregation. Satan does have a congregation. He does. And you might think it's the worldly people. No, it's not. No, it's not. No, it's not. The Gentiles are the Gentiles. They do whatever they want to do. The word literally means wild wildebeest. That's the world. They party, they do whatever they want to do. But inside of the system that God places you, Satan has a vexation. He comes and set up a serpent inside of there. And then he accuses you of being him. Slander. His intention is to scatter, to make sure you never gather. Here's the answer for it, because remember, we just look at the Hebrew boys. Daniel, they subject themselves. Here now is a young church in Smyrna, and they have to subject themselves to all of this. There's no resistance there. Let's see what their master tell them to do. Do not yield to fear in the face of suffering. You have gone through difficulties, challenges, financial hardship. You had to deal with slander. You had to deal with the temple of Satan. And he says, don't yield to fear in the face of suffering, of the suffering to come. And be aware of this. Not only as a satanic congregation, but he says, the devil is about to have some of you thrown into prison to test your faith. Okay, you want to stand firm, huh? Okay, you want to stand firm? God call you? Okay, let's see. Let's see when we strip everything away from you and make you bare naked. Let's see. For 10 days, you will have distress, but remain faithful to the day you die, and I will give you a victor's crown of life. The word victor's crown of life, there's the word Stephanos. Stephanos is a crown of life. You want life? Then I encourage you today, just like I have chosen, endure hardship as a good soldier. Endure it. And so we're going to go on an endurance test. We're going to go on 10 days of fasting. It's 10-10. In Revelations, they are going to go through 10 days of affliction. Because what do you do with myrrh? You use myrrh to anoint the body. It's so beautiful, you expect it to come back from the dead. And then in Daniel called out for what? 10 days. He said, what we're going to do is we're not going to go on an absolute fast here. We're going to have seed, or in the King James, they call it pulse, and water for 10 days. You could do that. You would do that before Christmas comes, because when Christmas comes, you're going to have another eating. Those of you that celebrate other religion, you're gonna have, yeah. So we want to go on 10 days of fasting. This is not self-flagellation. This is not self-affliction, as it were. You're not required to beat yourself with a belt, nah. Your fasting is going to carry on your daily duties. So you're employed by IBM, you're showing up to work. You're employed by Bank of Montreal, you're showing up to work. You are an evangelist, you're showing up to evangelize. You're not taking any time. You work for Walmart, you're showing up to work. But in that time, you're going to be on a fast, and that diet consists of water and seeds or lettuce. I want to stop there today. This was 45 minutes of teaching to bring you to the place where the Word of God incites us to test ourselves and to present ourselves before others. I had a vision this morning of a young, innocent young man, very innocent, naive. See, if you go on this fast, you're gonna pierce naivety. You're gonna pierce naivety. He was naive, but at the same time very bold. His hands was clean. They had put drugs on him, but his hands was clean. They had determined to mess up his life and mess up his records, but his hands was clean. And he had to show up for probation. The probation was not that important. They had gotten what they'd want. They had marred his record. They had something written against him. If you go on this 10-day of fasting with me today, God's going to make sure that the handwriting of ordinances that were against you is taken out of the way. It's a purification fast. Handwriting of ordinance. The evil intended, God will vex it. The evil intended, God will vex it. I'm telling you, when the young man showed up for the probation, they were shocked. They thought he would actually run. Well, Jesus told us here, don't run. He tells us, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Don't run. He says, I'm aware. I'm aware. I'm aware of your hardship. I'm aware of your difficulties. I'm aware of your financial hardships. And I'm aware of the slander. This system of politics uses slander. There was an attorney general that sat on our bench. And this man, the Lord visited me and told me that this man uses the works of the flesh to achieve his goal. The work of the flesh. He was an accountable man. But the nature of witchcraft is just that. The nature of controlling personalities are just that. Men will stoop to perverse things to achieve a goal. You must stand free in the liberty. I just want to give you, I want to give you the word that the Lord told me that this man used to produce the works of the flesh. Works of the flesh, Galatians chapter 5 and verse 19. The works of the flesh are evident is a phrase from the Bible, specifically Galatians chapter 5, which means that the actions and behavior driven by sinful desires are easily recognizable and obvious to others, especially stating that the result of giving in to worldly temptations are readily apparent. That's what Jesus told them. He said, don't give in. Don't give in to worldly temptations. Don't give in because they are apparent. If they're obvious, it literally means you're telling Jesus, I don't want to die. I don't want to die. Or the Lord is saying, flex yourself and get strong, because I'm about to show you some glory power. I'm about to show you some wonderful things. Galatians chapter 5 and verse 19. This guy was the attorney general in our country. And let me just give you the word he used, that the Lord says this guy used. The behavior of life is obvious: sexual immorality, lustful thoughts, pornography, chasing after things instead of God, manipulating other, hatred for those who get in your way, senseless argument, resentments when others are favored, temper tantrum, angry quarrel, only thinking of oneself, being in love with one's own opinion, being envious in the blessings of others, murder, uncontrolled addictions, wild parties, and other similar behavior. Let me see if I can find it. The King James defined it exactly the way you're supposed to have it, so that you can understand what God is addressing. Galatians 5:19. I've already read it to you, and I told you, be careful how you carry yourself. Now, the works of the flesh are manifest, which are these: adultery. In your fast, make sure you pray against adultery and stay away from it. The next one is fornication. Make sure you fast and stay away from it. Next one is uncleanness, lasciviousness, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, variance. And there's one here: variance and emulations. And variance, emulations, wrath, strife, seditions. Strife. You want to stay away from it. Don't give in to it. Don't choose sides because you feel that you may get some benefits. Be a child of God. Well, today I'm so thankful. It's 8:30. I'm ready for my next journey in the Lord. And I'm asking you to join us now. To join us. Join us on this fast for 10 days, starting today. 10 straight days. Let God give us some light. Hey, remember, we're coming to the end of the year. We're coming into a new government. January 1st. Well, it's not January 1st. It's actually January 28th, I think, is inauguration day. You're coming into. You've got to be ready. You've got to be ready. Stay clean. Stay clean. Stay clean. Stay clean. Morally and ethically clean. Stay clean. Stay clean. Keep your hands clean. Ascend into the hill of the Lord. Ascend into his holy place. God bless you. That was warning from the Lord to remind you. We love you. God bless you and make your blessing in the face of the earth. Amen.